For nearly a century, archaeologists believed they understood the origins of Stonehenge. The towering sarsens came from nearby Marlborough Downs. The smaller bluestones were dragged from Wales, and the mysterious altar stone, the flat 6-ton slab buried at the very heart of the monument, was assumed to have come from somewhere inches the Welsh hills. They were wrong. Inches, August 2024. A team of geologists publishing Inches the journal Nature shattered 100 years of assumptions. Through painstaking mineral analysis, they proved that the altar stone, the centerpiece of the most famous prehistoric monument on Earth, did not come from Wales at all. It came from northeast Scotland, from the Orcadian Basin, a staggering 750 kilometers away. And here is where the mystery deepens into something almost impossible to comprehend. This 6-ton block of sandstone was transported across the length of an entire island, 2,400 years before the wheel even existed in Britain. How did they do it? And perhaps more importantly, why? To understand the scale of what we are dealing with, you need to picture this stone. The altar stone measures 5 meters long, about 16 feet. It weighs roughly 13,000 pounds, 6 metric tons of solid sandstone. Today, moving such a stone requires cranes, flatbed trucks, hydraulic lifts. It requires steel, diesel engines, paved roads. The people who moved this stone had none of these things. They had stone tools, rope made from plant fibers and animal hide, wooden sledges, their own muscle, and the muscle of others they could convince to join them. And somehow, with these resources alone, they accomplished what would be considered a logistical marvel even today. Data, type stat value, YARM 750 unit kilometers context distance. The altar stone traveled from Scotland to Stonehenge dramatic sao true. The discovery itself reads like a detective story. For decades, scientists had analyzed the bluestones of Stonehenge and traced them to specific outcrops Inches the Preseli Hills of Wales, already an impressive journey of over 200 kilometers. They assumed the altar stone was simply another bluestone, slightly different, but Welsh Inches origin. Then came the mineral fingerprinting. Modern geology can read a stone like a barcode. Every rock formation on Earth carries a unique signature, a specific cocktail of minerals, isotopes, and crystal ages locked inside it. When researchers examined microscopic grains within the altar stone, they found something that did not match Wales at all. Some mineral grains were between 1 billion and 2 billion years old. Others dated to roughly 450 million years. This precise combination existed Inches only one place on the entire island of Britain. The old red sandstone of the Orcadian Basin, Inches northeast Scotland, near modern-day Inverness, near the Orkney Islands. A region so far from Stonehenge that, by foot, the journey would take weeks even on modern roads. The implications were so radical that the researchers spent years verifying their findings before publishing. They wanted certainty, and the certainty they reached changed everything we thought we knew about Neolithic Britain. But proving where the stone came from was only the first puzzle. The next question was even harder. How did it get to Salisbury Plain? The most obvious theory, the one comforting to anyone resistant to crediting ancient humans with extraordinary capability, was that nature did it. Perhaps a glacier, during one of Britain's ice ages, scraped the stone from Scotland and deposited it conveniently near where Stonehenge would later be built. The builders, the theory went, simply found it lying there. This theory had a long, respectable life in academic circles. It was elegant. It was simple. It removed the need to imagine Neolithic people coordinating across hundreds of miles. Inches, January 2026. That theory died. A new team of researchers conducted exhaustive mineral analysis of river sediments and glacial deposits along every possible glacial pathway between northern Scotland and southern England. They were looking for the telltale chemical signatures that would prove a glacier had carried Orcadian sandstone southward. They found nothing. No trace, no fragments, no mineral debris. The conclusion was inescapable. No glacier carried the altar stone to Stonehenge. The Ice Age theory was dead, which meant only one possibility remained. Data. Type comparison label. A glacier transport theory. Label be human transport reality. Humans moved it. Deliberately. Across 750 kilometers. So how is it physically possible? Consider the obstacles. Between northern Scotland and Salisbury Plain, inches 2600 BC, there were no roads. There were dense, ancient forests covering most of lowland Britain. There were rivers, marshes, mountains, valleys. There were no draft animals capable of pulling 6 tons. There were no wheels. The oldest known wheel inches Britain dates to roughly 3,000 years ago, meaning the altar stone arrived at Stonehenge a full 2,400 years before wheeled transport even existed. Inches the region. Data. Type resect stat value. 2,400 unit years context. Before the wheel existed, inches Britain dramatic true. Overland transport would have required hundreds of people pulling wooden sledges across rollers of logs, hacking paths through forests, fording rivers, climbing slopes. Each kilometer would have been a battle. Each day, a struggle to feed the laborers, repair the equipment, replace broken ropes. The journey would have taken months, perhaps years. This is why most researchers now believe the stone traveled by sea. The British coastline offered a far more plausible route. A large wooden vessel, or more likely, a raft formed of lashed canoes, could carry the stone along the eastern coast of Britain, riding currents and tides southward from Scotland, around the bulge of East Anglia, and into the waters off southern England. From there, it could be brought inland along navigable rivers, perhaps the Avon, before the final overland push to Salisbury Plain. But even this maritime theory demands extraordinary capability. It requires Neolithic people to have built vessels strong enough to carry 6 tons of dead weight through open ocean. It requires navigation skills along hundreds of miles of unfamiliar coastline. It requires knowledge of tides, of weather, of shelter. It requires coordination between distant communities who spoke perhaps different languages, who had to be persuaded to host, feed, and assist a group of strangers transporting a sacred stone. It requires, inches short, a society far more sophisticated than the simple farmers and herders that older textbooks described. And this is where the real mystery begins. Not how, but why. Why would a community inches southern England demand a specific stone from the farthest reaches of Scotland? Why this particular 6-ton slab? The altar stone was not the largest stone at Stonehenge. It was not the most prominent. It lies flat at the center, partially buried beneath the fallen trilithon. From a purely engineering standpoint, any equivalent sandstone from somewhere closer would have served the same structural purpose. So the journey was not about the rock. It was about the meaning of the rock. The altar stone may have been a gift, or a tribute, or a sacred object linking 2 distant cultures across the length of Britain. The Orkney Islands during this period were home to a remarkable Neolithic civilization. The great stone circles of Brodgar and Stennis, the village of Skara Brae, sophisticated tombs and temples that some archaeologists now believe were the spiritual and cultural center of the entire British Isles. If the altar stone came from this northern heartland, then Stonehenge itself may have been built partly to honor a connection with that distant culture. A monument not just to the sun, or to ancestors, or to the seasons, but to unity, to alliance, to a network of peoples stretching across the entire island. What the 2024 Nature paper and the 2026 follow-up have given us is more than a geological discovery. They have given us a glimpse of a forgotten world, a world inches which Neolithic Britons, long dismissed as primitive, coordinated across hundreds of miles, navigated dangerous seas, organized massive labor projects, and shared sacred meaning across the length of an island. They did not have writing. They did not have wheels. They did not have metal tools. But they had something we may have lost. The conviction that some things, some stones, some places, some bonds between distant peoples, are worth a journey of 750 kilometers. worth years of effort, worth the strength of an entire generation. The altar stone still lies at the heart of Stonehenge today, silent, patient, carrying within its ancient grains the chemistry of Scottish mountains, and within its presence, the memory of a journey we are only now beginning to understand. How they did it, we may never fully know, but that they did it, that is no longer Inch's doubt.